Hey. Okay, so we're on the Chinook build. So 1/72 scale Matchbox kit, vintage Matchbox kit from 1987, I believe. Now, I'm going to make this kit mostly out of the box. There's going to be a few tweaks to it. And the instructions, straight away I'm looking at these and I'm potentially spotting a problem, because the cyclic stick seems to be positioned in an odd place, which is forward and to the left of the cockpit seat. Now, I don't know if that's correct, but I'm thinking it's not, because normally cyclic is beside the seat. Excuse me. Normally the cyclic is beside the seat, and the cockpit pictures that I've managed to find where the cyclic and joystick are shown have shown a cyclic on the left hand side of the seat rather than on the left hand in front of the seat. So I think this is a wrong positioning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the pilot holes which are in the cockpit front, which are these two, one there and one there. And then I will drill some different holes and position the cyclic, and I will probably trim it slightly as well, so that it sits in a better position, and fit it at the side of the seat once the seats themselves have been fitted, so I know how much space I've got to play with. But also I've got a instrument panel down the centre that I need to gauge how much space I'll have between that and the seat this side. So that's my first problem, more or less straight from the start. Okay, so I'm going to pop in the center control panel, and then I'm going to pop in the chairs, and the reason I'm doing that is to gauge the space that I have. That's about correct. Now the chairs don't fit snugly on their mark, so I can actually slide this over slightly. So I'm going to slide it all the way. To the right, so it gives me some space down the side so that I can put in the pilot hole for the cyclic. And I shall do the same for this side. I'm just going to check. Now, the other thing I've done is I've removed the center door for the Airfix, sorry, not the Airfix, the Matchbox corridor that goes to the cockpit, and just basically because it's a better representation, more realistic representation of how the cockpit is. So I'm going to pop these in as well. And then that's going on. that should be, yeah, so that's not too bad. I can live with that in the cockpit, like so. Okay. Right, and then that means I can also get in there to check on how much space I have. So I'm going to let that to dry fully before I proceed to drilling holes. On this model kit, I don't know if you can see, but there's a mix of recessed and raised panel lines. Now there's unfortunately more raised panel lines than there are recessed. I'm actually going to try something which is the raised panel lines are very, very fine. So I'm going to try scoring them. And I am, excuse me, just going to use my scalpel to score along lightly. I'm not pressing too hard because I want to follow this panel line. And hopefully when it comes to painting and then doing the weathering, I will be able to do a panel line wash. And essentially, I don't know if you can see that is now much more prominent on the model kit, and hopefully when the paint's applied that will give me enough to, as I say, be able to do the panel line wash. I'm going to do the rest of the side of this now, and hopefully it'll be okay. Okay, so I've done the panel lining on both halves. I've made a few mistakes. I'm hoping that they won't be too noticeable on the finished model, or I may just come back and fill those and then rescore depending on how I feel. At the moment I'm probably erring towards rescoring and taking it from there. I do have a few more of the lines to do just on where the fuel tanks are on the Chinook. So the fuel tanks are just on here, but I'm hoping that you can see the panel lines now that they've been done. Okay, I've also just glued the rear ramp together, and the reason being is that I'm going to need this for test fitting in the rear cargo area for something that I want to do, a bit of extra detailing. So I'm going to need this to check clearance, etc. Going to pop in the joystick and the cyclic for the cockpit. Now I've already done one side, I'm just going to do the other side, and essentially I'm going to pop the joystick in first, which I'm not doing anything with other than you know, it's just going in as is. Now these are a little tricky to do because of the location. Once that's done, I'm going to do the cyclic. Now, the cyclic, I'm just trimming off the first couple of mil from the base because I don't think it's entirely accurate. That will then go in a position that I think is more accurate and fitting. And that's just gone in at the side of the chair, side of the seat. If you can see, it's just gone in there. And that's basically the cockpit more or less done. I'm going to spray the inside now, black for the cockpit. I'll spray it white for the troop carrying area, and then I will paint it with a pale grey. Now, I don't know if you can see inside, but there is some minor detailing which is fairly vague. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some ribbing to this rear area. The reason I'm going to do that is to give a little bit more detail to the fact that this area may be visible from the rear, because I'm going to have the ramp half open, and my intention is to just give it a little bit more detail. I'm not going to go too mad, but because when the ramp is on, I'm going to have it like so, so that this part here is open. I just want a little bit more detail visible. Using 1mm rod, this is 1mm by 1mm square rod, and what I'm going to do is just push that into the moulded position and align it by eye, and then I should just hold that into position whilst I wait for the glue to go off. Like so, and then I can do the rest. Once that's dried properly, I shall trim it so that it fits properly, and then move on to the next spar that I want to do. Just bringing you up to speed, I have masked off the cockpit canopy and I have given it a spray of Death Guard green. I will then go in with a dark green to continue with the painting of the cockpit panels, the panes. I have also glued one half of the interior, or rather I've glued the cargo tray into one half of the interior, and what I've done is I have sprayed both halves. The rear has been sprayed white, as I mentioned earlier, and the cockpit has been sprayed black. And then what I've done is I've just come in with a mid-tone grey, mid to light tone grey for a basic coverage, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash the whole thing with a black wash, which will probably be Nuln oil, and then once that's dry I will dry brush the interior with a pale grey to highlight the bits and pieces. I'm skipping ahead to sections 18 and 19 to make the rotor assembly. And I have already done the rotor assembly for section 18, and because there's two sets of rotors that are basically the same, I don't necessarily think it's going to matter which one goes where, but I have labelled the first set, which was 18, that I built. Now, there are some very tiny pieces here, or parts of pieces that are exceptionally fragile, and I will try and point these out as best I can. And they are essentially on the rotor hub, not there but here. There are, I think you might just be able to make out, there are 3 pins on the end of each of these, and these have to pass through the blades. So if you're not careful, there's a chance that you will break them like I did. I initially punched out the first one this side up, so I do suggest that you do it on the side that has the pins upwards, and then just gently trim it out from there. Now, if you do break a pin, it's not a major drama, because I have found that a standard paper clip cut to size is more than sufficient to act as a pin. If you drill out the appropriate sized hole, it's more than sufficient to act as the appropriate size to go through and secure the rotor blades. So once I've got the rest of these out, we'll come back and build this rotor assembly. One of the things that you're going to need to do is check the fit of the bottom of the rotor bracket here. So this is the piece which has the very tiny pins on it, so be gentle, but you need to check there's this square hole in the center, needs to be able to locate onto this square peg. So what you need to do is just test fit it to make sure it's going to go on. And I recommend doing that before you glue the assembly together. If there are any issues fit-wise, then just delicately scrape. I had a bit of flash in this to begin with, so the fit I don't think was going to be the best, but test it and test it until it sits in okay. And I think that's going to be okay. Right. Now, these rotor blades need to be aligned correctly, and basically the pin goes through the hole on the end of the blade. Now, if there are any fit issues, I suggest taking a pin vise and just running it through to make sure that any issues are cleared away. Make sure you note the way that the linkages are. And there you go, that's the first one on. Oops, it was the first one on. So, first one on. Now I've broken the linkage on this one, but I do have it, it's just there. And I've got a 0.75mm drill bit on this pin vise running through these particular pins. Right. Now, once that's in position, the top goes on and it sits onto the top of the pin that's come through the rotor blade. And that's it. So what I'm going to do is what I do recommend is if you have something with a little bit of weight to it, just drop it on top to press it down and walk away. Just walk away from it now, leave it, go and have a cup of tea, come back to it in an hour. Okie dokie then. Right, so I have, as I said I was going to do, I have painted and just dry brushed the insides to just give it some shadowing and some depth. I haven't gone too mad because it's mostly not going to be seen, but what I'm going to do now is I'm now going to glue these two halves together. Now I have torn myself some masking tape to help with the gluing process. So, all being well, we'll get this married up and then I can start gluing it. Right, so it's going to marry up like that. On the inside I'm going to use some super glue because it's going to be easier for me to put that on now. And as most of you know, my preferred super glue is super glue gel. So this is going to be easier for me to put this in here now, as is. Right, so that's what I'm going to do. The other thing I need to put on, or put in here, are the spinners for the props. So the spinners look like that. Those are the spinners. And obviously they go in here, like so. Excellent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start gluing this piece by piece. Now I have cleared any paint that was on the inside seams here, so that I should get a good joint on this kit. The one thing I'm going to do, as to why I pre-did myself some tape, is so that I can tape up as I go along. Now this is going to be the awkward bit, just this bit here. So what I'm going to do is get that bit done, get it aligned, and then tape. To hold that in position, and then do the rear. Get that held like thus. Right, and then the gap that I had here has mostly disappeared. So right. And now I'm just going to have to hold this here for a couple of minutes to let it go off. So I'm going to pop on the engine nacelles now, and I found that the best way to do this is to glue the nacelle into position. And then taking the next part, so we've got a cone that goes over the engine, and we've got a stabilizer that goes into position here, like so, and then there's an exhaust nozzle here, and like I said, I found the easiest way is to put this stuff into position, and then you can glue all the parts into place while it's in situ. So And then you've got a lip on the cone, and this needs to be at the top. So there's a little lip, you can see it just here, and this goes into position there. Okay, it's actually the line here is what it butts up against. I mean, it's definitely a kit of its time. I've had to obviously score some panel lining into it. You just need to try and straighten that up. On the kit. And then just pop in the exhaust nozzle. Like so. You've then got a engine cowling which goes into position here, and the RAF one is the one which has the two slots in the side. Now what I've done is I've actually cut these out to make them so they looked better, and then I've just popped some plastic card in behind to secure the basically cover the hole up. So that then goes into position like thus, and this is what we have at the moment. Just pop in some glue because that didn't feel as if it had taken very well. Right, so that's where we're up to so far. The next thing we're going to do is there's some pieces that just need to go on here, which is what I'm going to do next. So I've got these three little wedges. You probably can't see them on the green of the cutting mat, but they are, if you look at the destructions, they are meant to, one here just behind the front rotor blade assembly housing, and then there's another one here and another one there. Now looking at this, I've got an indentation there, I've got something here but nothing else. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to place these little wedges, just show you, I'm going to place them here on this side and the other one on this side here, and then I shall do the last one just here behind the front rotor assembly housing, and I think that's I think that's how they're meant to be. There is, like I say, there's a little indentation there, but does that go in there? I can't see anything else, but when you look further along the instructions and they flip the model round so that you're looking at this side of it in the instructions, they don't show the correct positioning for these, which is really frustrating. Let's have a quick look at the colour call out. And yeah, even on the colour call out, they're a little bit, they're not marked, which is really, really annoying. So I think I'm going to go with these positions, and hopefully that won't be too bad. We'll have to suck it and see, I suppose, how that goes. But let's take the first one. Pop that there. Second one is going there. Need to straighten that up a little bit. I think that's okay. And then the last one, I'm going to position just there. And hopefully that will be fairly accurate, she said. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. This mark here is for a blade antenna. Right. So as it stands at the moment, this is about as far as I'm going to take it for the first part of the build. The rotor blade assemblies are just sitting around collecting dust. And I've tried to, when I assembled them, you know, give them a little bit of droop. It's not accurate droop, but hopefully they'll be okay. I've labelled one so that I know which rotor assembly goes where. So the one that's labelled 18 goes on the rear, and this one therefore goes on the front. So that's kind of the state of play we are at the moment, and I need to have a look at some bits and pieces when I put the next few parts on, and hopefully you'll join me for that. I'm going to have a few issues placing this on the underside. It doesn't fit very well, so I think that might be a little struggle getting this in. Maybe a fair bit of filler being used. Anyway, join me in part 2.